This year was a year full of games with vibrant, interactive worlds. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on Game Ranks, 20 insane little details from games in 2019. Starting off with number 20, Call of Duty Modern Warfare had a very high level of detail, but some of the most specific details are in the guns. Magazines are saved if they have ammo, they're thrown away if they don't. When you get the sleight of hand perk, it's not just a speed up of the animation. Your character reloads faster and it's a different animation. At least for a few guns. There's obviously some guns where it doesn't make sense to do that for, but your Molotovs actually drip. The M4A1 magazine actually raises while the gun reloads. There's actually a ton of little weapons details like this, and the list goes on. Moving on to number 19, but still talking about Call of Duty Modern Warfare, is not just weapons, it's the environmental details. Things like when your character is aiming, they close an eye, which is not really that big of a deal, but when you see it, you're just like, oh, that fits in so much better. Other environmental details include objects like if you melee a folding chair just right, you can actually fold it up, which is not something that had to be possible at all. Like, if you shoot a soccer ball, it doesn't have to deflate. I don't think people are gonna complain, but when it does, it's just like, this really, it went the extra mile. Fans stop, canisters explode. It's not just that you can do these things to the environment, because obviously other games have done that before, but it really does a convincing job not only in the physics interactions, but the animations. And at number 18, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, of course, has tons of little details for you to find. That's almost part of the point of the game, in fact. All the little wildlife you see that aren't enemies or have any gameplay purpose. These little rabbit prairie dog things that watch you from a distance before they're running away, or this big lizard in the background, or these giant bird things on Kashyyyk. They don't serve any purpose, but they really make the world feel alive. And it's not just because they're there, it's obviously because they were done well. They're great. If you look at them, they're actually awesome. Also, another small detail, if you've ever looked at the outfit that Prof is wearing, you'll notice that there's a piece of car exhaust on his breastplate. It's like a pipe flange with an actual gasket on it. Anybody who's ever had a really loud car exhaust and has actually done something about it themselves knows exactly what that is, and it's really neat to see them do something like what they did with the original films, which is use real-world objects. Moving on to number 17 is Pokemon Sword and Shield. This is a little detail I just think is fun and funny. You can kind of do a little dance by spinning the control stick. In Pokemon camps, you can crouch and press the right stick and get a better look at your Pokemon. Whistling attracts strong Pokemon, makes weaker ones run generally. But some Pokemon are just normally scared of you, so you have to sneak up on them and catch on them. There's just a bunch of little weird things that feel like, oh, this is a bit more of an alive world that you actually have to interact with in various ways. And at number 16, Death Stranding, doing all of the weird hand motions while you're in the safe room. Like, he makes faces in the mirror, he winks at the player, makes signals at the player like, let's go do a thing. It's really personable, like the stuff that he does, and it adds this layer of real humanity and personality to something that is kind of a menu screen. And it's hard for me to understate how much I really like that element of this game. Moving on to number 15, but not moving on from Death Stranding, the Otter Hood. This is a weird detail, not really something that you would find in real life. The Otter Hood is something you can get from Conan O'Brien, yes, that Conan O'Brien, which gives you the ability to swim better, but not just swim better, the ability to swim like an otter, which is just extremely goofy and very Hideo Kojima-like. And did I mention you get it from Conan O'Brien? Because that's a normal thing. And at number 14, another Death Stranding one, you can interact with this world in so many crazy ways, like using ladders is normal, using a motorcycle is normal. But have you ever placed two ladders next to each other and used them like a bridge for your motorcycle? Like, this one I particularly like. because there's a lot of times in that game where you're like just a little bit frustrated with that motorcycle. Don't get me wrong, it's nice. But I think there are little elements of like semi-torture in that game, and I think that at times that motorcycle is one. So if you're stuck somewhere, try out the ladder trick. Moving on to 13 is Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. Obviously the combat in this game is awesome and quite detailed. Some people have likened it to a rhythm game in some ways. But I know a fun little thing you can do, which is very video gamey and also just a fun little detail. You can wave your sword over an open flame, which will set it on fire and allow it to deal fire damage for a set duration. This is going to be very useful because fire damage can be very useful. Moving on to number 12, and this is probably going to sound a bit like a weird one, but all the live action cutscenes in Control just have this feeling of depth that I just didn't expect at all. And I think that they lend an element of reality to a game that is just concerned enough with reality to create a really cool environment. Now, particularly the Threshold Kids segments, I'm not going to spoil anything, but if you get to it, you'll know what I mean. Number 11, sticking with Control, the optional bosses, completely optional. You don't have to do them at all if you don't want to, but they're bizarre. They're basically like kaleidoscope monsters, if that makes any sense. I know it doesn't really, but I mean that's kind of the whole aesthetic of the game. It's embodied really well in these truly bizarre bosses, and I don't know why I love them so much, but they are a ton of fun. At least sometimes. Other times they're really a big bother, but I would say it depends more on what mood I'm in than if they're cool kaleidoscope monsters, because they always are. Moving on to number 10, a couple of Resident Evil details. For instance, zombies falling apart when shot in usually fairly disgusting ways. That game just does a very good job with soft tissue. But that in mind, when you play as Tofu, I think his details are probably the best in the game, although they're obviously not scary in any way. It's just funny when he runs and jiggles around, and how when he gets damaged, chunks of tofu are gone. You basically know how alive you are by how much of you there is. I'm just going to go ahead and say Tofu is a lot of fun, and I wanted to talk about him. And then think of this little detail. Gas prices in the Resident Evil 2 remake, they're from 1998. Gas has not been that price since then. $6, come on. Moving on to number 9, in Luigi's Mansion 3, there is a button called the Mario button. When you press the Mario button, Luigi shouts out for Mario.
Oh, Mario.
It serves no other purpose than that, but it's just a little personality detail that I think really works.
Mario.
Because it's kind of fun to hear Luigi cowardly yell out for Mario at any given time. It is definitely not useful, but I am also a big fan of little personality details like this.
Mario.
Moving on to number 8, but sticking with Luigi's Mansion 3, something I didn't expect to be in the game, but I'm really stoked, is how much level of destruction the environments take. The previous games you just knock around a lot of dust and things would shake, but in this one you kind of get the true Ghostbusters experience, where a room before you fight a ghost does not look vaguely similar to that same room after. It's just that so much stuff you can smash, break, damage, etc., that it really adds another layer to the game. Moving on to number 7 is Metro Exodus, which this is one that's kind of a little bit of a pet peeve of mine in other games. A lot of the time when you hit somebody with a car in a game, you don't get anything. You get like a rumble or a sound. Metro Exodus, when you run over enemies, they will splat on the windshield. And that's good because enemies aren't just going to go under your car every single time you hit them. And let's say you do make it so an enemy goes over your car when you hit them with it. They're not going to do that on your windshield for the most part. Number 6 is Shenmue III. The voice acting lines, and before you just think that I'm like, wow, the acting's so good. That's not what I'm saying, because it's not.
I need help with something. I'm looking for Mr. Yuan.
No idea. All I care about is martial arts.
Okay then.
I am talking about how much things change based on context and objectives. There is a ton of just unnecessary dialogue recorded, so every single person in town has something different to say, even if it's not that important.
Do you know the flower, bird, wind, and moon bookie?
Who's that now?
I'd like to talk to the flower, bird, wind, and moon bookie.
If you want to speak with him, then go see him.
It's just an attention to detail that is well above and beyond what it needs to be, and the bad voice acting is, in its own way, fairly charming.
What could this be? A magazine? I've got no use for it.
Number 5 we find in Days Gone, which is, let's just say how awesome the freaker hordes are in this game. There are so many little details in the way that the freakers animate as a big group, with all these running zombies jumping over fences and roofs. You could pause it at any given time and just look at all these little machinations that, it's such an intense attention to detail for these things that are moving super fast, and it would ultimately be so easy to miss all of the work they put into it, but it's really cool. Number 4 is sticking with Days Gone. The weather effects in this game are really cool. Snow will start light and then it'll build up and actually collect on the ground. Snow patches start appearing before the ground is just totally covered in it. It doesn't just blanket the environment, it covers your clothes, your bike, and even dead enemies. And it's all done in real time. Rain is similarly very cool to look at, and the puddles that form in this game are just very realistic. And it's one of those times where you're like, let's talk about the weather. Moving on to number 3, in Mortal Kombat 11, how every character has unique lines when they fight other characters specifically.
Hands down, best stand-in ever. I'm the star. You're the stand-in. Keep dreaming, mini-me.
It's not a big thing, it's a small detail. But the slight difference in demeanor and word choice based on opponent, it totally sells all the individual characters.
Pop quiz. Worst film you ever made?
My flicks only come in awesome or boom.
It's amazing I was ever born.
Coming in at number 2 with Apex Legends, the mill dot. The elevation numbers, while aiming down sights if you're unfamiliar, change dynamically depending on the elevation of what you're looking at. Now, it's hard for me to come up with a way where this is particularly helpful, but it's a really neat little detail. Another one is if you hold left on the D-pad, you can inspect your gun. It's utterly pointless. A lot more pointless than the mill dots thing even, but at the same time, it's really cool. And finally, at number 1, let's talk about Devil May Cry 5's insanely detailed combat animations that do such an amazing job transitioning between each other rather than just cutting animation short. It's all just this beautiful, smooth transition between animations, and it's, in a lot of ways, just an achievement. It's really good. And did you notice all the little details in Devil May Cry 5? If you put V near Griffin, his hair reacts to the wind the wings creates. Even these little smaller details, like if you get near a cliff branch, all of the little transparent bubbles harden as if it knows you're getting near and that you might be kind of a threat. Look at how the animation changes depending on how you enter this room where this painting transforms. If you walk in, run in, jump in, it's all there. There's so many little things like this. It's really an amazing game. And a quick bonus for you, it's one that you gotta kind of pay attention to, but it's kind of like, well, that's really cool they did that. Was in the Outer Wilds, where there's a realistic gravity simulation, where planets that you enter the orbit of have a gravitational pull. And the way that they actually affect your ship, it's not like a big thing, but it does affect the difficulty of piloting your ship. And I think it adds a lot to the feel of the game itself. What were some little details you really liked about games this year? Leave us a comment, let us know what you think. If you liked this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week, and the best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. So click subscribe, and don't forget to click the notification bell. As always, we thank you so much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero, and we'll see you next time right here on Game Ranks.